Okay, we're going to get started. So, welcome to Diego Rivera, Art and Social Change in Latin America. And this online class covers a lot of material from different areas of Latin America. We start looking at the Mexican muralists, Diego Rivera, Los Tres Grandes, women artists in Mexico, and a little bit looking at other Latino artists in the United States and in other places. The class started at San Francisco City College, where one of Diego Rivera's most important murals is Pan American Unity, a mural that we're going to be looking at during the class. And this mural was painted by Rivera in 1940 as a part of the Golden Gate Exposition, which is like a World's Fair. And he was aided by different intern and assistant painters who helped him with this massive mural that's 75 yards long, which will be soon moved from San Francisco City College to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art because the space is too small there at City College. So this mural was his largest mural in terms of size for a single mural, and this was painted as a tribute to City College students, to people that are working and studying, and painted in San Francisco. And during this time, Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo were living in San Francisco and interacted with a lot of people in San Francisco. So this was a historic mural. So the class looks at that mural, and we're going to look at a lot of the different Mexican art. You'll see the first assignment is to trace the influence of the Communist Manifesto in Mexican art. And this assignment really is geared for you to take a look at the Communist Manifesto and see what it is that Karl Marx was saying and why these ideas were attractive to Mexican artists. How did they use these concepts in their paintings? So the key to this is to look at the Communist Manifesto to find some of the ideas that are reflected in the paintings and the murals. And this is fairly easy, as you can see how Marx talked about the society being divided into two classes, into the proletarian, who are the working people, and the bourgeoisie, who are the owners of the means of production. So in this way, he saw all working people as having a common bond in that they're working for a wage. And so this is something reflected. We see in a lot of the Mexican murals, the protagonists of the murals are working people. People who are struggling to survive, who are working for a wage, and in Rivera's view, being exploited. So by putting them in the forefront, he's showing their impact, their importance in society, and their importance. Again, also he's showing what Mexican people look like, to try to protagonize, again, the mestizo identity, people that were rarely portrayed in art and rarely portrayed in the forefront as being important and having a very important role in society. Again, portraying Mexican history, looking at reviewing who the martyrs, who the heroes are. Again, what is the sequence of events? Who are the important figures, and how do they interact? So by doing this, the murals are kind of retelling Mexican identity, Mexican history, and tracing some of the images that hadn't been seen before in Mexico. And we can see he's also looking at using elements of pre-Columbian history, pre-Columbian art, looking at the indigenous cultures of Mexico and the way that these are incorporated into the mestizo culture. So, so the first 3 weeks are going to be looking at the Mexican mural movement. We're going to be focusing on these muralists and the impact of this movement, and how it impacted Mexico and how it reflected some of the trends that were going on at the time. So after that, we're going to start looking at the Cuban Revolution and the way that was impacted by art, and also it impacted art, and some of the trends that came out of that. And we'll see that while murals were an important form of public art in Mexico, large paintings on public walls in public buildings and public areas that could be widely seen by people walking by in Cuba, this was not really possible. Because of the tropical heat, this kind of painting was not possible. And again, there weren't so many large spaces that could be used. So some of the forms of public art that we saw in Cuba were different. We saw poster art and new influences, again, while trying to protagonize and show the importance of working people and to depict a Cuban identity and history. The Cuban artists picked different medium and different means to do this. So we'll look at this, and also the difference between the Mexican Revolution and the Cuban Revolution. We'll look at how these also were impacted by art and also impacted art. The Mexican Revolution, a revolution that overthrew the Porfirio Diaz dictatorship in Mexico and ended the peonage and the debt slavery of many Mexicans, but didn't have a vast influence on changing the distribution of land and wealth in Mexico. Where in Cuba, the revolution was a complete redistribution of land and wealth that resulted in a very different art movement coming out. So we'll look at that, and we'll look at the generation of the 80s, a group of Cuban artists that were educated as revolutionary artists who were taught to be like Che, to denounce injustice and inequality wherever they saw it, using their art, to use their art as a means of putting out their ideas and expressing the ideas of revolutionaries living within the system. And they found themselves with serious problems when they tried to put their art out publicly. They found that gallery administrators and museum administrators were not so willing to put these critical paintings and these critical artworks to display them. So this was one of the confrontations. And we see also the creation of the Conjunto Folclórico Nacional, the national folklore troupe, that brought many of the art forms and cultural expressions of the poor and marginal people and brought them to the forefront. So this was a huge change in the culture. So after this, we're going to be talking about Nicaragua and the Nicaraguan Revolution of the 1980s and the revolutionary movement of the 60s and 70s that led to the revolution in the 80s that also transformed Latin American culture. We're going to be looking at Ernesto Cardenal, a liberation theology priest that began an ideal, a utopian community in Solentiname, a small group of islands, an archipelago in the middle of the lake of Nicaragua, where he created a religious community in the 1960s based on the ideas of liberation theology. And to get people involved in art, he brought in artists and painters, but also he redefined what art was. So how could people with a third grade or fourth grade education write poetry? Well, in Spanish, poetry has very complex rules, and usually written poetry is done by people with advanced education. And he redefined painting and poetry to make it accessible to people with very little formal education, and launched several important movements, cultural movements, by making art and culture accessible to people to express themselves. So poetry was then an expression of lived experience. And art was people painting their surroundings using whatever tools and whatever technique that they had. And it produced very vibrant works. And also, they were using elements of the Bible as interpreted through liberation theology. So we're also going to be looking at the Zapatista rebellion of the 1990s, its impact on Mexico, and the Zapatista rebellion. We'll be looking at that. So this is what we'll be covering in the class. Does anybody have any questions? I see there's a few people here now. So you can either open up your microphone or you can type it in the chat window, either one. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay. So the way the course works is every week there's readings, there's discussion, questions, and there's assignments. So we'll have a check-in on Saturday mornings where we'll review the readings, and you can ask me any questions, and I'll be discussing the assignment. I'll be recording these for future use, for future reference, and then you turn it in on Sunday night. So this is how the course works. Now, let's say you have some kind of emergency or some kind of obstacle that stops you from turning in your assignment on time. So all that I ask you to do is to request an extension. You don't have to tell me the whole story. The dog ate my homework or any of these kinds of things. I don't need to hear it. You can just say, I need an extension, and I'll say, fine. And the reason I do this is so that you're acknowledging that you're going to do the work and that I'm aware that you're going to do it. And we have a record. So that's all you need to do. So the only problem is at the very end, you'll have to complete all the work that's been assigned because I have to turn in grades very soon after the class is over. In the summer session, they don't give me much time, and there's 60 people in the class. So you'll need to keep up. And if you have something that's stopping you, just let me know that you need an extension, need more time, and I will automatically say yes. So if you have doubts or questions, you can reach out to me. We can have a one-on-one video conference. You can email me. I'm very accessible. I'm here. You can reach me. I even have the Canvas app on my phone that you can also download, that you can have it on your phone if you need to do things remotely, if you're away from your computer. So anybody have any questions so far? Comments? No? So what else was I going to tell you? So one of the things is the reading. So you can download, there's the two books that you need to buy, The Mexican Muralism and Diego Rivera, My Art, My Life. The other readings are downloadable on the course site. There's PDFs. There's a few additional articles and videos that you can watch online. And I'll be also sending you current events, like articles about current events, things that are occurring that are relevant to the class, and suggesting any events that you might want to go to that are related to the class. If anybody lives in the Bay Area, there's things going on all the time related to Mexican muralism and Latin American art, and I can suggest those. In Santa Cruz, I don't really know because I'm not there. I'm in the East Bay. But so I'll be suggesting those things to you as we go along. So anything else? And I apologize, I just fell like about an hour ago and sprained my wrist. So I'm on my way to the emergency room right now. So thank you for your time. And I'm very honored to have all of you in the class. And I'm always feel inspired to work with such talented and creative young people that take their summer to take a class like this and take their time. And I'm very proud to teach you. So I will also record later a kind of a summary of my experience. And so you'll see who I am, and I'll post that on here. But now I have to run off to the emergency room. So thank you, and keep in touch. So if you have any issues, just let me know. Okay? So just type goodbye. So I know you're there.
People type hello and goodbye.
Yeah. Okay.